Hey guys, welcome back to the playlist. My name is Dustin Apple. This is the Outdoor Mentors, and we're talking about arrow building. All right, all the things you need to know to build the proper arrow for your situation. Make sure that you are watching this video in a playlist. You can go into my profile and watch the arrow building playlist because all of these factors all combine into one. Today we're talking about a term called dynamic spine. Okay, now you know that we talked about grains per inch and arrow diameters and arrow spines and arrow selection charts, as well as FOC and a few other things that we've talked about so far. But what is dynamic spine? You already know that each arrow has a spine, okay, this one being a 350 spine, all right, and let's say that I referenced a arrow chart and it said that for a 100 grain point, okay, being average 70-pound bow, that it recommended that I shoot a 350 spine. But maybe my bow isn't that efficient, okay, maybe it doesn't shoot excessively hard. Well, then quickly that 350 spine becomes just a little stiff. And if that arrow doesn't come off that wrist with a slight amount of flex to it, then it's going to be very unforgiving to shoot. The same goes on the opposite end. Let's say I've got a 70-pound bow and I went through the chart and all this, but I skipped one very important thing. See, I didn't measure the exact draw weight that my bow draws, and I had a couple twists put in the cables and it doesn't make 70 pounds anymore, it makes 74. Well, now all of a sudden my 350 spine arrow is weak. So I need to do something about that. But so since it's weak, now it flexes a whole bunch, and that really affects my arrow flight, because if it flexes too much, then it takes a lot longer travel downrange before it recovers, meaning that most of the time it's straight, but it flexes a little too much, or you get a slight different variations in shafts where you got one or two that might be slightly weaker, and those arrows never fly true. So you got one arrow that's always down low left, and all the rest of them are right in the middle, but the middle isn't tight where it should be. The middle's about like this, and you just can't seem to get any better. Well, maybe it's because your arrows aren't properly spined, even though you follow the procedures, but maybe you're off a couple of pounds on your bow weight. So that is what dynamic spine is. The dynamic effect that shaft takes on once it's shot from a bow. The notion that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, that sort of thing. Okay, so the more front weight you have, the harder it is to get that object moving. All right, the lower the front weight is, the easier it is to get that object moving. That has a lot to do with how much an arrow flexes once it's coming out of a bow. So once you're paper tuning, okay, you're getting ready to set up your arrow shafts and you're paper tuning your bow to make sure that everything is working properly, but the shafts just won't quite tune. They're getting a little knock high or a little knock low, or they kind of vary. Well, you can add or subtract at 25 grain increments either way and see which one flies better. Now once you get into high FOC arrows, the proper way to do it is to get a test kit, okay, that has multiple different size points, and you can build an arrow shaft based on how that arrow shaft tunes. All right, with a goal weight in mind, you can determine how long your arrow needs to be, how much front weight that you're going to end up with, and make sure that you pick the right spine to be able to come up with the exact arrow build that you had in mind. Now, for a target archery arrow, I want to build something as lightweight as possible. That way my arrows fly really flat. So I might drop down in spine, but that's going to make my spine weak on my shaft. Well, then all I have to do is lower my front weight. But once I lower my front weight, I want to make sure that I don't get below 4 or 5% FOC. So you can see how this series is all joined hand in hand, and each one is building your education on how to build a better arrow and how it'll make you just a slightly better archer. Thanks for joining me on this one. This is a very special episode because dynamic spine is very, very important. However, there's no chart for it. Dynamic spine is kind of like a snowflake, that every bow and every arrow combination is completely different, and every archer behind that bow adds another factor to it. So you need to make sure that you're paper tuning and adjusting your front point weights higher or lower to make sure that your arrow flies completely perfect out of the bow before we go into fully building arrows. Guys, thanks for joining me. We'll see you right here on the next one.